Holy City Center Radio, it is episode 126, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Wednesday, May 24th, 2023. Hey everybody, hope your week is going well. Smack dab in the middle. It was busy on Monday as far as news is concerned. That continued a little bit into Tuesday. You may remember in the last episode, I kind of teased like, hey, here's what I'm going to talk about. And I started to get into the topics, in reference to today's episode. Hey, coming up on Wednesday's episode. And I made some comment like, well, maybe I should stop there because things tend to change. And I don't want to say I'm going to cover something and then I don't, or I have to postpone it. And it's a good thing I said that because, news definitely changed some things as far as what I had planned. And so that's why I should never preview anything. You just never know what's going to happen in the city, in the state, in the country, in the world. You just never know what news is going to break and things change. So plenty to get to today. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the latest news. Some sad news to pass along. The city of Charleston on Monday night announced that Police Chief Luther Reynolds had died after a multi-year battle with cancer. According to the city, Chief Reynolds, who was 56, passed away peacefully in an area hospice facility at 8:10 p.m. He was with his wife, Caroline, and his two children, Luke and Grace. All were by his side. It wasn't that long ago, so you probably remember that Police Chief Reynolds had announced that he was stopping cancer treatments and was going to be entering hospice care. I believe it was just last week. And unfortunately, sometimes when you hear people mentioning, hey, no longer going to do cancer treatments, going to go into hospice care, the hospice care could be a decent period of time, depending on their diagnosis. Obviously, none of us were privy to his personal details, nor should we be. But I think, it was sad to hear that he was going to move to hospice care. But I don't think any of us that don't know him personally anyway, I don't think any of us assume that, he would unfortunately pass this quickly. You knew it was coming when they talk about hospice care and stopping treatments. But still, I think pretty shocking and certainly sad for the community. There's been an outpouring of support. I'm sure some of you have seen it online, social media, as well as news organizations running pieces and things like that. And, I know when we talk about police and things, and I don't know really anything about Police Chief Reynolds personally, but I know some people have certain feelings about police and regardless of, what city or state we're talking about. But it seemed there was a lot of good things to say, about the former police chief. I was happy to see that, as opposed to what could be the alternative. You just never know when someone in the public eye passes what some people will say. So it was nice to see an outpouring of support. His family and friends certainly deserve that. And, our thoughts and prayers are certainly with him, his family, and his friends as they go through this difficult time. Some lighthearted news to change gears here. Still, as of recording, no idea what the heck it was, but there was some kind of loud noise or noises that were being reported across the Low Country on Tuesday morning. Some described it as like an explosion. Some thought maybe it was, fighter jets breaking the sound barrier or something like that. But around 8:40 a.m. on Tuesday, there was some kind of loud noise, some Ring cameras, the doorbell cameras that people have, or Nest or whatever. I don't know for sure if they were all the same program, of course, but a lot of people were able to record the noise on their doorbell cameras and shared it on social media. I did not hear it, despite the fact a friend of mine who lives nearby texted me immediately after, like panicking, like, what the heck was that? I didn't hear it. I don't know how. I was in the shower at the time. Apparently, my bathroom is soundproof. No clue. Had no idea. But many, many people throughout the area in many different towns, not just James Island, downtown Mount Pleasant. There was a lot of people saying they heard it in Mount Pleasant, some downtown, of course, Johns Island, Folly Beach. And really, there was just no explanation for it. A few people have tried to look into it and try to determine what it was. There were some sort of military or fighter jets flying around West Ashley. A few people posted those, so perhaps one of them broke the sound barrier, creating a sonic boom. They're not supposed to do that, but it could have been that. But really, no one knows. Uh, the South Carolina Emergency Management Division and the U.S. Geological Survey both said that they didn't have any reports of earthquakes, so we can rule that out. There was back on May 16th a press release that people had found from the Coast Guard and Waterways Management Division that said Joint Base Charleston would be conducting explosive operations at Wharf Alpha on the Cooper River and Goose Creek from May 22nd to May 28th. So a lot of people, myself included, thought, oh, well, maybe that's it. I mean, it says right here they're going to be doing explosive operations, but they have yet to respond to any media requests for confirmation or denial that perhaps what we heard was an explosion related to whatever activities they were doing. So as of this recording, they hadn't responded either way. Uh, there was also an official with Joint Base Charleston, since they were the ones supposedly conducting these explosive operations. So we didn't hear anything from the Coast Guard, didn't hear anything from that Waterways Management Division, but ABC News 4 reached out to Joint Base Charleston, and they did confirm that they are conducting a weapons movement operation, is what they called it, but they would not confirm if they were the source of the noise, which is interesting. I don't know if they just like, we don't know for sure if it was us, because a lot of times you're dealing with like a public relations or media specialist person, and not necessarily the people who are actually involved with what we're asking about. So as of this recording, they weren't taking responsibility for it. The U.S. Coast Guard, when they were asked by ABC News 4, they also could not say what caused it or comment on what was happening at the Wharf Alpha. It could be one of those things where, when it comes to military operations, sometimes police ones as well, there's certain things they can and can't share based on they don't want certain information getting out there. I don't know why they couldn't just confirm without getting into details. Oh, yeah, that was us. Nothing to worry about. Perfectly normal, but no one is taking credit for it. No one is really denying it either, though, which is interesting. So a lot of people we're all left wondering, what the hell was that noise? I posted on my Instagram one of the clips from someone's camera. You could hear it. And yeah, a lot of people were a little shaken up by it, because not only was it super loud, but apparently it was shaking houses. That's why some people wondered if it was an earthquake or what else. But a few people talked about those infamous Seneca guns, this term for unexplained noises that happen in this area of the country. You can look it up. A lot of times when these noises happen, because this isn't the first time, people will always point out, like, it's just Seneca guns, as if that explains it, because it literally is an unexplained noise. So who knows? Who knows what the heck it was? Made for an interesting morning on Tuesday, that's for sure, as I was looking at people's clips and comments and trying to see if anybody had any information on it. But the good news is, whatever it was, it doesn't appear to be anything we need to be worried about. If it was like a true explosion, you would think we would have reports of people being injured or a fire somewhere or just something, smoke. But nothing like that was reported in the area. So if there's, as of recording, again, I don't know what it was. So if something changes, obviously keep that in mind. But it appears no one was harmed, nothing was damaged. That is important to us as a community. So it appears everything's okay, but still an interesting and fun little mystery that I guess is just going to remain that way. All right, here's the story I thought I'd be leading off with until all this other stuff happened. But I'm providing an update on the situation involving the Charleston County Detention Center and their quest to find a new medical provider. You may remember some of the issues they were having with their current provider, which we'll review for those of you who don't remember. But it appears that Charleston County has inked a new deal with a new company. So this healthcare that will now be taking place at Charleston County's jail will soon change hands after the county officially inked an agreement this month with a new for profit correctional health care company. So, unfortunately, still dealing with a for profit entity, but it is what it is. County officials and the sheriff assert that the new partnership with Vital Core, which is a Kansas based company, will bring positive change to the Sheriff Al Cannon Detention Center, where the deaths of two inmates prompted calls earlier this spring for a federal investigation into a potential pattern of civil rights violations. The county's failure throughout the last year to hold the current provider, WellPath LLC, accountable calls into question whether a new provider will even solve this jail's healthcare crisis. Because, as you may remember, when they were looking at different companies, a lot of them had some similar issues as well. So, many people in the last year have suffered in South Carolina's largest jail after not receiving their prescribed medications or treatment for mental health or physical injuries, according to multiple jail reports. WellPath was that company that was supposed to provide those things. And even though they're on their way out, there are several factors at the jail that will likely persist, according to the Post and Courier, including a deluge of detention deputy vacancies and the regional medical workforce. Now, Vital Care, that new company, hopes to retain all current employees, they told the Post and Courier, that currently work at the Charleston County Jail. So does that solve any issues either? So the county has agreed to pay Vital Core just over $7.4 million annually, according to the contract that was signed on May 8th. That's $1 million more than what the county currently pays WellPath. A 15% increase is what that amounts to. The price of staffing is responsible for the uptick, according to the contract. The agreement can be renewed annually for a period of 5 years. That was similar to last contract where they were allowed to renew things. So, sometimes when you switch companies, you pay more, maybe you get a better product. Will that be the case here? Obviously, we're yet to see. So, Vital Core, under this new contract, is required to carry $9 million more in liability insurance than WellPath. So, a much higher requirement in that sense. That is a good thing. Just making sure that if something horrible were to happen again, they have that coverage. So the increase comes as Charleston County is part of this litigation due to the provision of medical care that it currently has at that jail with WellPath, as I mentioned. That includes a wrongful death lawsuit filed by the mother of D'Angelo Brown, a man with schizophrenia who was stuck for months in a filthy isolation cell. You may remember me talking about this on a previous episode where, feces were on the wall, it was just dirty and it was unclear how often it was cleaned, and he ends up, dying, and the death was ruled a homicide due to gross medical neglect. Now, again, as I said in that episode, that's not mine or the Post and Courier or any other media outlet's term. Gross medical neglect was in the actual ruling from the coroner. So essentially placing blame squarely on WellPath and the detention center. Now that's being worked out as to who exactly is responsible. Was it as bad as it appeared from reports? It certainly seems that way, but you never know how things are going to go in the court system. So it became pretty clear, and the detention center certainly seemed ready to move on, and there was different issues involving their contract they had. They were certainly ready to move on, and finally they will. So hopefully this new company will do a much better job of taking care of anyone that is going to be in the detention center and needs care, whether it's, like we said before, the prescriptions that they already have, making sure they're getting those on time. If something comes up while they're there, making sure they're treated properly and being able to handle folks with mental health issues in a much better manner than perhaps the last company did. So that new contract was signed, and they will be taking over the detention center care shortly. The other big news, and has been for a while, the abortion ban push continues. The Republican led state Senate on Tuesday was expected to debate a bill banning most abortions after an ultrasound detects cardiac activity, which is generally around 6 weeks and before most people even know they are pregnant. You all have heard this plenty of times. You're aware of what they're trying to pass. The debate did start on Tuesday as of this recording. There hasn't been a resolution. There may be some news on that. I'll be sure to share it on Friday. So this new proposal includes some new regulations that were inserted by the Republican-dominated South Carolina House last week. So they had proceedings last week. I talked about it. It was slowed down by those, I think it was 1,000 amendments that the Democrats brought to the table trying to delay this abortion ban. It spanned across 2 days. In the end, it didn't matter. It was still passed. So you also probably remember the state and the House, both, in control by Republicans. The House wanted a more strict abortion ban, and not that the Senate's version wasn't strict, but it wasn't as strict as the House's version. They couldn't come to an agreement. Seemed like the abortion ban was not going to go anywhere this legislative session. Henry McMaster, the governor, decides to call them back for a special session, and this is one of his priorities. In doing that, the House seemed to realize, all right, if we want to just pass something, we are going to have to be closer to the Senate's version. So they started to, work in that framework, but they have added some things. And now we know the Senate possibly won't pass it. So here's what we're talking about with some of these new, proposals that were added. First, House Republicans took out a section that would have allowed minors to petition the court for an abortion up to 12 weeks of pregnancy, regardless of, if there's any fatal anomalies or if the health of the child is in question. And the child in this scenario I'm talking about is the child who's pregnant. So that was a petition that anyone under the age of 18 could say, hey, yeah, especially because they may not even know they're pregnant at 6 weeks, not just minors, but adults as well. Let's allow minors up to 12 weeks of pregnancy. It's a different situation. House Republicans said, nope, they took that out. They also added a requirement that biological fathers would have to pay child support beginning at conception. Now, that is something I've talked about before. If you're going to pass an extreme abortion ban, you have to look at things like that. You can't just pass it and be like, all done. There's a lot of issues that are going to be around this. If you're assigning personhood to a fetus at 6 weeks, then you have to do things like that. Like child support should start at that point because you're considering them a human being at that point. So that was added. Some senators have said that they're going to pull their support for the bill after those changes, including 2 Republican women who, as recently as February, supported a similar ban that was around this 6-week mark. So it's unclear right now whether enough Republicans are going to disagree with the changes to hurt the chances of the measure going to the governor's desk. There is that possibility. So as usual, contact your state senators, let them know what you think about this ban. It could make the difference. There could be some senators on the fence. Now, don't get me wrong. It may put an end to this current version, but some version is probably going to pass. If not this legislative session, one in the future. But hey, anytime you can stop it, that's a good thing. So be sure to reach out to your local legislators and let them know your feelings on this bill. So as of this recording, the debate was happening. We'll see if there's enough Republicans in the state Senate who say, yeah, we're cool with this. We're going to send it through. Or if the changes the House made was just a bridge too far for some of them. If there's a decision after recording and before Friday's episode, you can rest assured I will be filling you in at that point in time. That'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. Thank you so much for listening. As I mentioned, I'll be back in just a couple days on Friday. Thank you so much for listening. And if you want to help out, please rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're listening on currently. It's a big help. Or just share it with someone who you think may like to listen to the podcast who may not be listening already. I also want to thank Lindsay Marie Collins and Cole Collins, no relation, of LMC Sound System for producing each and every episode of this podcast. I really appreciate the hard work they put into it. And a thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every episode as well. Looking forward to talking to you on Friday. Hey, get your detective hats out. Let's figure out what the heck that loud boom was. Maybe we can get to the bottom of this thing. But until Friday, good night and good luck.